Hey everybody, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. In today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the most frequently asked questions that I receive about the AP Lang exam, and that is, do I really need to include a counter argument in my synthesis or argument essays? Before we begin, let's stay in touch. Please be sure to make sure that you are subscribed with your notifications turned on. That way you don't miss any future AP Lang content as you prepare for the exam. Also, if you are a TikTok user, I would love it if you would follow me on that platform as well. I try to post videos on my Coach Hall Writes account each day, and as the exam approaches, I'll be going live on TikTok to help you study for the exam. So in this video, we're going to talk about what a counter argument actually is, if you really need one for the AP Lang exam, and if so, where you should put it in your essay and what it should look like. Let's start by talking about what a counterargument actually is. So simply put, a counterargument is basically the opposing side of your argument. You might have noticed that in some synthesis or argument prompts, it says the phrase, "to what extent?" That's because essentially arguments exist on a continuum. And so whatever position you choose to argue, presumably there is an opposite side as well. That's the counter argument. So do you really need to include one? The short answer is no. Addressing the counter argument is not required as part of the current synthesis or argument rubrics. However, effectively addressing the counter argument can lead to a more nuanced argument, which is one of the tenets of sophistication. Now, I want to be clear here. Just because you include a counter argument in your essay, it does not guarantee that you will earn the sophistication point. However, even if you include it and don't earn the sophistication point, if you do it well, it could help your evidence and commentary. I also want to address one other thing, and that is, even though it's not mandatory for the exam, some teachers will require that you include a counterclaim and rebuttal or concession and refutation in your essays. And that's to help you develop your argument skills. Knowing how to address the counter argument is not just valuable for AP Lang, it will help you in future college papers, and honestly, it sometimes comes up in everyday situations as well, whether it's debating with somebody about something on social media, or writing an email, or just talking to a friend or a family member. You might need these skills. So even though it is not mandatory on the AP Lang exam, you might choose to include a counterclaim and rebuttal or concession and refutation. So let's talk about why this might be helpful. First of all, it could help you create a more nuanced argument. And this is because it would demonstrate that you've considered other perspectives, which sort of increases your credibility for your perspective as well. It can also help you squash opposing arguments or viewpoints, and in turn, you will further your argument. So even though it's not mandatory, let's say that you want to include one in your essay, where does the counter argument go? Well, here's the thing, you get to decide. So we want to think about, where does it fit best in your argument? We want to think about where it's most effective and also where it's most logical to help your line of reasoning. So there's going to be a few different options. I'm going to talk about what it might be like in body paragraph 1, the last body paragraph, and also within a body paragraph. So some students like to include it as body paragraph 1, and that's because they kind of like to address the counter argument early to sort of get it out of the way. This can be a useful technique, but I want to encourage you to make sure that if you do this in a timed essay, that you have plenty of time to develop your other points. Because if you address the counter argument in your first body paragraph, and then you don't have time for your other body paragraphs, it will make your essay seem very unfinished, and also it might seem like you're contradicting your thesis. That's not to discourage you from using this approach, just be mindful of your pacing and your timing. Most commonly, I see students including the counter argument as a final body paragraph. Many students prefer this method because since they put it at the end of their essay, they don't have to worry about pacing as much, because if they're running out of time, they can just omit that paragraph and they've already made their other points. Therefore, they've already constructed their argument. Now, most of my students actually tend to prefer to address the counter argument within their body paragraphs. In many cases, this is only a sentence or two, so it's not meant to try for the sophistication point, but rather it's just a way to further their argument. As you're just starting out with this technique, including it within a body paragraph can be helpful because I think it's less intimidating. There are two common methods for addressing the counter argument. One is a counterclaim and rebuttal. The other is a concession and refutation. So let's talk about what those terms mean. A counterclaim and rebuttal must come as a pair. The counterclaim is the opposite position. That's the claim that goes against your claim. And the rebuttal is a statement to disprove the counterclaim. So again, they come as a pair because if you only have the counterclaim, then you're not furthering your own argument. You're actually kind of advocating for the other side. So make sure that they come as a pair. In comparison to a concession and refutation, a counterclaim and rebuttal are a bit more bold, and so there's definitely a time or place for this technique. Here are some sentence frames that you can use to construct a counterclaim and rebuttal. These sentence frames are pretty versatile, so you can adapt them to your own writing style or to your argument. And a lot of the words can be interchanged as well. So for instance, if you prefer however instead of yet, just adapt it to your needs. If you find these sentence frames helpful, please feel free to screenshot this slide. And also teachers, I'll include some additional teaching resources in the description box of this video. The second method for addressing the counter argument is a concession and refutation. This approach is a little bit softer because the concession means that you are acknowledging the merit or the value of the other side. Now, like I said before, we need a pair, so a concession should be followed by a refutation. So even though you're acknowledging that there is some value to the opposing argument, you still want to provide proof that the opposing view is incorrect or false, and that your side is the side to go with, thus furthering your own argument. Now, presumably, if you are an AP Lang student, you've also worked on rhetorical analysis. And so you might have noticed that some of the writers or speakers have used a concession and refutation in the passages that you've studied. So just like it can help those writers further their argument, you can use this technique to further your argument. Here are some sentence frames that you can use to construct a concession and refutation. As with the previous sentence frames, these are pretty versatile, so please feel free to adapt them to your needs and your writing style. If you'd like, you may screenshot this slide. Now let's look at a quick example of what a concession and refutation could look like. This particular example is meant to be part of a larger body paragraph. And this is in response to a prompt that my students talk about in class, in which they have to discuss whether elementary schools, especially kindergarten, should be more technology-based or more play-based. So you can see on the slide that the orange is the concession and the blue is the refutation. So here's what it says. While it is true that we live in a digital world, and as such, students need computer literacy skills, adding these skills to the elementary curriculum should not come at the expense of an even more crucial skill, social emotional learning, a skill best achieved through non-technology-based play. So you can see here that in the orange, we're conceding that computer literacy is important. It's a digital world, so yes, kids need access to computers. However, the point that we're ultimately trying to prove, though, is that for the younger grades, it's very important that they have time to play. That's how they learn, and we don't necessarily need a tablet or a Chromebook to achieve that. So anyway, that's one quick example, but there are several ways to adapt this technique for your writing. All right, let's do a quick recap. Do you need to address the counter argument in your AP Lang synthesis or argument essays on the exam? No. However, your teacher might ask you to do so in class to help you further your skills. If you choose to address the counter argument, it can technically go anywhere in your essay, so make sure that you're thinking about your pacing and where it best fits for your argument. There are two major techniques that you can use, a counterclaim and rebuttal, and a concession and refutation. If you found this video helpful, please make sure that you subscribe, turn those notifications on, that way you don't miss any future AP Lang videos. And as always, happy writing!